Hi everybody. Just before this video starts, I just want to let you guys know that the phones are okay for right now. We are going to still be switching to AT&T once again, but for the time being, because of Verizon's policies, we do not have to get rid of the phones and are instead paying them off, which is godsend. So, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's story. We're continuing the same story we've been doing. And like I said, I think in the beginning I have the second book to do, as well as a new story that will be starting very, very soon once we finish all this. And the second book of my tiny town just got put on lockdown. Until then, this will be what is being posted as for horror stories. I know it's something new, guys. I know you guys are probably not used to it. If you guys are just playing it here for random content or gaming, but yeah, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying it here. And do whatever you guys want out of the series. I really appreciate everything you guys do for me. Thank you guys, and God bless y'all. See you guys in the next video. God bless y'all. This is My Tiny Town Just Got Put on Lockdown, Part 4. Day 21. Gladly, we've made it a few days without incident after my encounter with a creature of which I still have no name for. We haven't seen any since, but we have heard them outside, and I've noticed that they tend to become more vocal at night. Thought many times to myself since my supply run to the neighbor's house of what horrors I might have found in the last two rooms on their second floor hallway. I had only made it halfway down the hall before running into and fighting the creature. What happened to Eric? Are there kids? These were questions that kept surfacing in my mind. But I wasn't sure. I really wanted to know the answer, too. Thanks to my expedition, we now had a bow and a set of arrows as well as a healthier supply of food. This, however, was only temporary. A temporary solution in my mind. For one reason was that I knew I was pretty much crap with a bow, having very little practice with one. I also knew that we really couldn't help staying here. I knew it, and Grace knew it. We had to find a way to get out of this town, somewhere more secure. But how? My truck isn't strong enough to push Humvees out of the way, and there isn't enough room to go around them. I sat on the couch with Addie as she played on her tablet. The girls have been so well behaved during this whole ordeal so far, and I'm thankful that even though they don't really know what's going on, they are listening well and being quiet when we need them to be for safety. The dogs, on the other hand, have acted almost completely oblivious to what's going on, except for a few key moments when they have barked when we needed them to be quiet. Thankfully, they haven't caused any huge problems and quieted down quickly. Just as I was thinking that, I hear Grace whisper from the other room, "Trevin, front door, bring me Addie." I shut up and grabbed Addie, carrying her to Grace as she moved the girls upstairs. As I handed her Addie, I turned to the door and saw what she was signaling me for. One of the creatures had made it up on the porch and was pacing around. I moved to the kitchen and grabbed the bow off the top of the fridge along with a handful of arrows, having the tips screwed on previously in preparation. I moved up to the front door and unlocked it and opened it while the creature was at the far end of the porch. I backed up about 10 feet and took a knee, knocking an arrow and drawing back, aimed at the opening of the door. One of the things I learned in my supply run was that the creatures seemed to be blind and did their hunting through sound mostly and possibly smell. As long as I was very quiet, I could at least get one solid shot off before I knew I was there. Sat in silence, bow drawn, waiting. The creature slowly walked to the doorway and stepped past the threshold. I clicked my tongue, and the beast froze and focused its head directly at the sound and directly at me. At that split second, I released and let the arrow fly. I had aimed for its nose slits, but it missed the mark, but did make contact. It hit the creature in the shoulder and buried itself halfway in. The creature let out a screech as I knocked another arrow and drew it back. Drawing the bow each time felt like fresh knives being stabbed into my wounded shoulder. Firing a second time and hitting my mark this time, dropping the beast where it stood. As it hit the ground, it released plumes of purplish gray fog into the air and upsettling into our house. I got off my knee and fully sat down, just relaxing and letting my heart settle back down from the suspense. As I started at stared at the now dead creature, blocking my open front door. I heard movement on the steps, and very shortly after, the door to the steps slowly cracked open. Through the slit I met eyes with my wife, and since she saw that I was sitting calmly, she opened the door the rest of the way and stepped into the room.
Dogs and girls are in Hattie's room playing quietly.
She answered my question before I had even asked it, just seeing that it was what was on my mind by the look into my eyes. This being the first time Grace had an up-close look at one of those creatures, she walked up to it to inspect it.
Is this just like the other fog lurker thing you fought over at Eric's?
She asked as she knelt, looking at its unusual form. Yeah, I was much more ready for it this time, though, I confirmed as I began to stand back up. We need to move that body.
Holy crap!
Grace interrupts me as she grabs one of the arrows protruding from the fog lurker and ripping it out as she runs back toward me. She covers half the distance between us before I see one of the raccoon-sized flaming spider creatures run through the doorway toward us. I kneel to grab another arrow lying by my side on the ground as it jumps at me. Grace swings the arrow in her hand and connects with it, not doing much damage, but hitting it hard enough to change its course midair so it wouldn't hit me. Grace took 2 steps back and grabbed the shaft of the arrow with both hands. It was essentially a sharp stick, and she knew that, but it was better than being completely unarmed. I knocked the new arrow and turned to the beast, drawing the bow and sending ripping pain in my shoulder at the same time. Just as I turned, Grace meets eyes with the spider and grabs her head as the torrent of horrific images flashes through her mind. In the panic, I fire, missing the center of mass of the beast, but pinning two of its legs to the floor, immobilizing it. It lets out a guttural scream of pain and switches its gaze to me. I try to look away, but I am too slow, and our eyes meet, sending pictures of torture and gore through my mind like a mental tsunami crashing through an oceanfront city. As I became stunned, Grace was released from the creature's mental assault. She recovered quickly and lunged for the creature, burying the arrow still in her hands. Oh, excuse me, guys. I apologize for that. Into its back. The creature broke eye contact with me as it let out another scream of anguish. Grace scrambled to her feet and backed away from the creature, and we both realized that what we had thought were flames were nothing more than orange bioluminescent hairs. They were nothing more than an illusion, a very convincing one, but nevertheless still an illusion. I ran to the lurker in the doorway and ripped the last arrow out of its face, knocked it, painfully drew the bow, took aim, and fired. The screams of the spider creature suddenly stopped as the arrow pierced its neck, just below its skull, ripping through its throat and killing it. As it lies dead, Grace and I, breathing heavy, meet eyes. Maybe not. I'm not as bad with the bow as I thought, I said, dropping the bow to the ground and walking over to Grace, who was nearly still tense from the battle. She wrapped her arms around me, slowed her breathing, and whispered,
"What the heck is happening?"
"I really wish I knew," I replied. "We need to get these bodies outside and get the door closed so we don't let any more of that fog in." Oh wait, hold on. It was the girl talking. It was Grace talking.
"We need to get these bodies outside and get the door closed so we don't let any more of that fog in,"
she said as she let go of me and began pulling arrows out of the flame spider. So far, we hadn't noticed any actual problem with the fog, other than its odd nature. It didn't seem to be dangerous in any way. That being said, I fully agreed with her, and I didn't really feel like taking any chances with it. We got the lurker outside and off the porch, and my wife grabbed the spider by the legs and threw it out the door into the front yard. It hit the ground with a thud and a few feet from the lurker. We closed and locked the door. I grabbed the fan from the basement and aimed it out of one of the windows to purge the house of the fog as best I could. Grace opened the door to the steps leading upstairs to find both dogs waiting on the other side, and promptly ran to and began sniffing the 2 spots the bodies had been lying on the carpet. Both my wife and I went upstairs to check on the girls. Izzy had fallen asleep on a pile of stuffed animals from an impromptu nap. Addie had covered herself with one of her blankets and used the other to curl up next to her little sister and pass out as well. "Fog lurker," I say to Grace as we close the door behind us and let the girls sleep.
"What?"
"That's what you called it downstairs. I don't have a name for them before. I like it. It fits," I respond. She smiles, but it quickly fades as we hear the dogs let out one bark, each then come running upstairs, past us, and into our room. Grace and I look at each other and run downstairs. When we get downstairs, we saw the problem. Having our front door open as we fought the two creatures let their screams of pain alert others. None of the lurkers were present, but we saw at least 3 of the flame spiders things walking in circles around the outside of our house. Grace and I looked at each other, and without a word, we both set out in different directions, making sure all the blinds were closed on all the windows. After about an hour of periodic checking, the creatures left. After we confirmed that there were none of them left around the house, my nerves settled and I realized that I was really hungry. So I began to cook something for us all in the kitchen. Grace checked on the girls and then joined me in the kitchen, telling me to get some food ready. We all ate and decided that we had more than enough excitement for one day and gathered everyone upstairs for the night.
We need to get out of here. I feel like they know we are here now,
Grace whispered to me as we sat watching the girls play quietly to wind down for the day. I know there was a lot of activity and a lot of noise today, but I think I may have a plan, I said, as I wondered if my plan was even possible or even had all the parts available.
Mommy, play Barbies with me, please,
Addie said as she raced over to Grace, Barbie in hand. Grace crawled over and played with her for a little while as I went to the bathroom to remove my bandages and see how much damage I had done to my stitches. We all gathered in our bedroom again as always that night. But instead of lying awake as we had so many nights before, all of us slept hard, deep in a dreamless slumber until we awoke the next morning. Day 22. After we got Addie and Izzy settled for breakfast, Grace asked me about what the details of my plan were. I realized that our conversation had gotten cut short last night due to Addie's request to play with Barbies. Knowing that we needed something to move the Humvees out of the way, or we would have no way out of town, also knowing that my truck would be unable to move them, I had remembered that just 2 blocks away was a farm equipment repair building that usually had some form of large, powerful farm equipment parked in front that would be able to move the military truck so we could leave. This was a much longer journey than hopping the fence to get food from the neighbors. Also, I had no guarantee that there would even be any big tractors or equipment there. Sometimes it's an empty parking lot, and if I made that journey just to be met with emptiness in the parking lot, I would be screwed. Not to mention if I would be able to get the thing started, if there was something there. There were so many unknown variables, yet it still seemed to be the only viable option.
Why don't you take the truck and drive over there to see if there's anything there?
Grace asked with considerable insight. I thought about that, but I don't want to draw that much attention to myself before we were ready to go. You know, the truck is kind of loud, I replied. For this plan to work, I'm going to have to get over there, start whatever I could find as a bulldozer, move the Humvees out of the way, all while you gather all the supplies you can and get the dogs and girls loaded into the van, and meet me at the roadblock to get us out of here.
It's a lot of steps, and a lot that can go wrong, she said.
I know, but can you think of any better ideas? I replied, nearly begging for her to come up with a better idea.
No, you're right. There aren't any better options,
she relented.
So when do we start prepping?
Sadly, I think the sooner the better, since we have clearly attracted attention to our house, I said, referencing the parade of creatures we had around the house last night. Let's gather stuff up in the house tonight, and we can try to get out to the van in the morning. It seems like I see them walking around the least about midday, so that's when we will plan to go. She nodded in agreement. The rest of the day went rather quietly. We packed together supplies as if we would be living in the van for a week, loading food into boxes and coolers, clothes and diapers, dog food, electronics and cables, everything we would need. We moved everything to the back door in preparation for executing our plan. Attention high and nerves rattled in anticipation for how the plan would play out tomorrow. We went to bed. And that is it, guys. God bless y'all. Amen.